these days, especially in the States, you have to be a politician or an assassin or something to really be a superstar.
At 85, Grace Slick, celebrated for her powerful voice and unforgettable stage presence, still captivates with her honesty. Though she touched the hearts of many, behind the scenes, she wrestled with substance use during her performances. It was during this chaotic chapter of her life that she crossed paths with Jim Morrison. Sharing the stage with him, she witnessed firsthand the slow and painful unraveling of his life. Now, at 85, Grace has come forward to finally confirm the long-whispered rumors about the darkest corners of Jim's world. After finding the strength to seek help and overcome her own struggles, she speaks with clarity and reflection. Could the secrets she now reveals be part of what led to Jim Morrison's addiction and his untimely death? Join us as we take a look into her revelation. At 85, Grace Slick finally confirms the rumors about Jim Morrison's darkest secrets. He was beautiful, yes, but he was also broken completely out of control. Grace Slick finally admitted at 85, confirming what so many had only whispered for decades about Jim Morrison. For the first time, she spoke openly about the chaos, the madness, and the strange, unforgettable night that showed her exactly how far gone he truly was. It was 1967, just before the Europe tour. Grace and her bandmate Paul Kantner were at the Tropicana Motel in West Hollywood. After finishing a gig, they were walking down the hallway when suddenly, right in front of them, appeared Jim Morrison, stark naked, high on acid, and barking like a dog. Not howling, not singing, just barking, down on all fours like some kind of wild, lost animal. Paul didn't blink. He simply stepped over Jim and went to his room, like it wasn't even surprising. But Grace couldn't stop watching. She thought it was hilarious, bizarre, and unforgettable. That was Jim, hauntingly beautiful, completely unfiltered, and already slipping into something darker. By 1968, the truth became even clearer. Jefferson Airplane and The Doors were now on tour together, playing huge shows in places like London and Amsterdam. The energy of the crowds, the substance, the rebellion, it was a storm they all fed off. Grace had seen Jim perform before, but being around him every day was something else entirely. She felt drawn to him, like so many women did. He was magnetic, leather-clad, dark-eyed, dangerous, but he was also, as Grace would later describe, screwy. Half the time you couldn't even talk to him. He'd be completely out of it, lost in some fog of acid, booze, weed, or whatever else he could get his hands on. Grace wasn't exactly sober either, but Jim's world was on another level, spinning too fast for most to survive. One night at London's Belgravia Hotel, Grace decided to follow that pull. She'd been watching Jim for days, feeling that same raw attraction so many others had felt. So she walked to his room and knocked, using Jefferson Airplane's secret rhythm. Jim didn't know the knock, but he still opened the door with that infamous smile. What happened next? Grace never forgot. It wasn't just a hookup, it was something wild. They turned the hotel room into a chaotic playground. Strawberries, grapes, whatever fruit the hotel had. They smeared it across each other's bodies, laughing like kids in a world with no rules. Grace later said it felt like making love to a floating art form with eyes. Jim, she said, was well-built, bigger than average, and she wasn't shy about how much she enjoyed it. But the madness didn't end with passion. After that wild, fruit-covered night, Grace got up, looked at him, and said, "Call me if you want." She didn't beg. She didn't wait. She was Grace Slick, a woman who never chased anyone. But Jim never called. Not the next day, not ever. She laughed about it later, joking, "Apparently I'm a terrible lay, but the truth is, it hurt just a little." That night had sparked something for her, even if it was fleeting. Jim, though, was already drifting. He was unreachable, lost in a haze he never came back from. Grace never hated him for it. She understood. Jim wasn't built to stay grounded. His darkness ran too deep. And now, decades later, she finally says it out loud. Jim Morrison wasn't just wild, he was gone. Even then, a beautiful storm, already spinning toward the end. Beyond the revelation from Grace Slick about Jim Morrison darkness, What more has she added to her revelation? Keep watching to find out. Grace Slick remembers Jim's dark side. Later on, during the tour in Amsterdam, the bands had another unforgettable moment. Everyone was hanging out when someone showed up with a block of Lebanese gold hashish. Grace Slick and the Jefferson Airplane crew offered some to Jim Morrison. While most people saved theirs for later, Jim didn't hesitate. He sat right down on the curb and ate a huge chunk of it on the spot. He chased it with whatever else fans had handed him: pot, hash, pills. No one really knew exactly what he took. That night, during Jefferson Airplane's performance, Jim stumbled onto the stage. He began singing alongside Grace, throwing his arms around her and swaying like they were lost in some kind of dreamlike dance. The crowd went wild, but after a while, Jim danced off stage, made his way back to the dressing room, and passed out cold. Grace laughed about it at the time, but deep down she saw it as a red flag. Jim was spiraling out of control. Grace wasn't surprised when Jim died in 1971. He was just 27 years old, found lifeless in a Paris apartment, most likely from a deadly mix of substance and alcohol. She had already lost friends to that same lifestyle, like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, but Jim's death felt different to her. She always believed it was a miracle he made it that far. He treated his body like a science experiment, pushing it to see how much the brain and body could take. Grace used substance too. Acid was her substance of choice. She even wrote White Rabbit while under its influence. But she had boundaries. Jim didn't. He would put anything into his system, anytime, any place. Grace once said that she never had a bad trip on acid because she didn't have underlying psychological issues. Jim, though, believed he was trying to escape something far darker than anyone could see. After Grace Slick revealed Jim Morrison's dark secrets, many wondered what kind of tragedy might have been waiting for him. Keep watching to find out. The mysterious death of Jim Morrison. What really happened? Jim Morrison had a long history of heavy substance use and alcohol addiction. His struggles with alcohol were talked about by Rolling Stone magazine, his bandmates, past girlfriends, and others who knew him well. The 1991 movie The Doors includes a scene where Morrison convinces his bandmates to try psychedelic substance. The movie shows this moment as the start of the band's wild concerts in Los Angeles, California. That scene is shown as the key turning point that led to the band's fast rise to fame. In 2007, a Paris nightclub owner named Sam Burnett wrote a book where he claimed Morrison died from a heroin overdose in his club. He said Morrison's death scene in his apartment was staged to look like a quiet accident. These claims have never been proven true. Many people have continued to wonder and come up with ideas about how Morrison really died. But the most accepted reason remains heart failure. Since there was no autopsy, we may never find out the true cause of death. After finishing L.A. Woman with The Doors in Los Angeles, Morrison told his bandmates that he was planning to go to Paris. Most of them thought it might be a healthy decision for him. In March 1971, Morrison took a break from The Doors and went to Paris to join his girlfriend, Pamela Corson. She had rented an apartment at 17 to 19 Rue Beautreilly, located in the Le Marais area of the 4th District. In letters to friends, Morrison described going on long walks around the city by himself. During this time, he shaved off his beard and lost some of the weight he had gained in recent months. He also called drummer John Densmore to ask how L.A. Woman was selling in the stores. That was the last time anyone in the band spoke with him. On July 3, 1971, Morrison was found dead in the bathtub of the apartment in Paris around 6 a.m. by Corson. He was just 27 years old. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure, even though an autopsy was not done because French law didn't require one. Corson later said that Morrison's last words while he was in the bath were, "Pam, are you still there?" Some people, like singer Marianne Faithfull, have claimed they were present and believe Morrison died of an accidental heroin overdose. Sam Burnett who opened and managed the Rock and Roll Circus nightclub, said he found Morrison unconscious in the club's bathroom around 2 a.m. after taking heroin. He also claimed that two men, believed to be substance dealers, removed Morrison's body from the club. But because no autopsy was performed, these claims could never be proven. Music writer Ben Fong Torres said there were efforts to keep Morrison's death secret. When reporters called Paris, they were told that Morrison was not dead, but just resting in a hospital. His friend, filmmaker Agnes Varda, later said she helped hide what really happened. In her final interview before she died in 2019, Varda said she was one of only 4 people who attended Morrison's private burial. Morrison died exactly 2 years after Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones and about 9 months after the deaths of Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. All of them were also 27 years old when they died, which helped create the idea of the 27 Club, a group of famous stars who all passed away at the same age. Since Morrison's death, people have continued to come up with different ideas about how he really died. What series of events could have contributed to Jim Morrison's downfall before his death? Stay tuned to find out. The downfall of Jim Morrison. Jim was spiraling deeper into a life that was slowly destroying him. His heavy drinking had become a serious burden for his bandmates and a growing disappointment for his fans. He frequently missed rehearsals, and when he did show up, he was often too drunk and aggressive to practice properly. On one occasion, Jim arrived at the studio only to discover that the rest of the band had already left. Enraged, he trashed the entire place. He never paid for the damage he caused. Jim's reckless behavior finally caught up with him on a cold December night in 1967. It was his first arrest since becoming famous, though not the first time he'd found himself in trouble with the law. The Doors were scheduled to perform in New Haven, Connecticut. Before the concert, Jim met a woman and brought her backstage to the shower area, where they started kissing. A security guard, unaware that Jim was the band's lead singer, told them to leave immediately. "Eat it!" Jim snapped at the guard. The guard pulled out a can of mace and warned, "Last chance. Last chance to eat it!" Jim fired back. The guard sprayed Jim directly in the face with pepper spray, just moments before he was supposed to take the stage. When the band's manager informed the guard of Jim's identity, the officer apologized. He admitted he hadn't realized he had just maced the star he was assigned to protect. Still, Jim made it on stage, but his fury boiled over mid-performance. He stopped singing. "The whole world hates me," he shouted into the microphone. He then told the crowd what had happened backstage with the guard. He mocked him, calling him a little blue pig in a little blue hat. "I'm just like you guys, man. He did it to me. He'll do it to you." The audience erupted. Police stormed the stage and dragged Jim away. He was arrested and charged with inciting a riot, public indecency, and obscene conduct. 13 others were also arrested as fans poured into the streets, angry and upset. This marked the first of 2 major arrests that deeply affected the Doors. The second came on March 1st, 1969, in Miami, Florida. It was a storm of rumors and conflicting accounts. Witnesses claimed that during the show, Jim pulled down his pants in front of nearly 12,000 fans. Some said he pretended to touch himself on stage while shouting profanities. He was later found guilty of public exposure and vulgar speech. He received a jail sentence and a fine. But did it actually happen? Over 500 photographs were presented in court, and not one showed Jim doing what he had been accused of. Jim and his bandmates insisted he never exposed himself. He had only joked about it. Regardless of the truth, the fallout was massive. Venues didn't want the trouble that came with the Doors, to be understood. But in the end, he felt like he had become nothing more than a dirty rock star no one wanted on their stage. Jim's pride was shattered. He felt like he had let himself down. The pain inside him grew so strong that the only way he knew how to deal with it was by trying to escape it. He drank again and again to forget the rise he once had and the crash that followed. When the pain didn't go away, he drank some more. His slim frame and youthful face were now bloated, hidden behind a heavy beard. The alcohol had taken its toll, not just on his body, but on his mind and soul. Before Jim Morrison became involved with substances that changed his life, what kind of beautiful life did he have? Stay tuned to find out. Jim Morrison, the boy who became a rebel rock legend. Jim was born as James Douglas Morrison. His parents were Clara Virginia and Rear Admiral George Stephen Morrison, who commanded the U.S. naval forces during the Vietnam War. Life in a military family wasn't easy for Jim. Constantly moving from place to place, he rarely had the chance to build long-lasting friendships. Because of this, he developed unusual and not fully formed social habits that made him different from most kids. In 1947, when Jim was just 4 years old, a haunting event changed his life forever. While the Morrison family was driving through the desert, they came across a terrifying car crash. Jim witnessed several Native Americans lying lifeless on the ground, bloodied and unmoving. Despite his parents' efforts to protect him from the scene, he couldn't look away. Later in life, Jim claimed that he saw the spirit of one of the dead Native Americans rise from the body and enter his own. He believed this surreal moment to be the most powerful influence on his life, using it to explain his later strange and reckless behavior. As the years passed and the moves continued, Jim found it harder to connect with people. Knowing friendships and homes would never last, he turned inward and found comfort in books. His favorite authors became his truest companions, always with him no matter where life took him. He developed a love for poetry and grew fascinated by the deep ideas of famous philosophers. The name of his band, The Doors, came from a quote by one of those writers. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. When the band began making music, The Doors started performing regularly at Whiskey A Go-Go, a famous club on Los Angeles' Sunset Strip. Although Jim was quiet and reserved off stage, he transformed during performances. He often avoided facing the crowd, sometimes singing with his back turned. Struggling to deal with the growing pressure and attention that fame brought, Jim turned to alcohol as his way of coping. Drinking became his escape, but it also led him toward a self-destructive path. Less than 2 years after Jim and Ray met by chance on a beach, The Doors landed a deal with the Elektra record label. It was the 1960s, a time when people were beginning to question rules and find their own voices. Society was shifting. The Doors quickly gained a reputation as a band that pushed against the system. Their songs often touched on dark and powerful topics like death, madness, and violence, mixed with classic themes of desire, substance, and rebellion. Just months after signing their record deal, their song Light My Fire shot to the top of the charts. In June 1967, it reached #1 on the Billboard Top 100 and held that spot for 3 straight weeks. The Doors had officially arrived. Their rising fame led them to a chance to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, one of the most watched programs in the country. They were set to perform Light My Fire and People Are Strange. But before the show, producers asked them to change a line in Light My Fire because it hinted at substance use. Can you please change the line, Girl, we couldn't get much higher, to Girl, we couldn't get much better? Jim nodded in agreement. When the time came to perform, Ray Manzarek took his place at the organ. Robbie Krieger stood with his electric guitar. John Densmore was behind the drums. And Jim, his brown curls brushing his shoulders, stepped to the front of the stage, took the microphone, and began to sing, You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be a liar if I was to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. The band members glanced at one another with knowing smiles. They finished the song exactly as written. Afterward, Ed Sullivan refused to shake their hands. A show producer angrily told them they would never be invited back. Jim just shrugged and said, Well, hey man, we already did. It was just one of many times the Doors would boldly show the world that they didn't follow the rules. Who was Grace Slick? And did she live a life so much like Jim Morrison's That she truly understood the world he came from? Stay tuned to find out. The story of Grace Slick and her rise in rock music. Grace Barnett Wing was born on October 30th, 1939, in Highland Park, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. Her father, Ivan Wilford Wing, 1907 to 1987, was of British ancestry. Her mother, Virginia Wing, née Barnett, 1909 to 1983, met Ivan while they were both attending the University of Washington in Seattle, and the two later married. In 1949, Grace's younger brother, Chris, was born. In August 1965, Grace Slick came across an article in the San Francisco Chronicle about a newly formed band called Jefferson Airplane. At the time, she was living in San Francisco, which was fast becoming a hub for new and exciting music. Though music wasn't her main focus, that changed after she saw Jefferson Airplane perform live at a small venue called The Matrix. That performance sparked something in her. Inspired, she formed her own band, The Great Society, with her husband Jerry Slick on drums, his brother Darby Slick on lead guitar, and David Miner on bass. Grace took on vocals and guitar. The band made their debut on October 15, 1965, at a local spot called the Coffee Gallery. Soon afterward, Grace wrote a psychedelic song called White Rabbit, reportedly in just 1 hour. The song, which referenced the mind-altering experiences of psychedelic substances, quickly became a standout. When performed live, the band gave it a faster tempo, and it immediately became a favorite among fans. Grace was a key contributor to the Great Society's original songs, but Darby Slick was steering the group toward a sound influenced by Indian music and psychedelia. By the end of 1965, the band had become a notable act around the Bay Area. Between October and December, they recorded a number of tracks at Golden State Recorders with producer Sly Stone. One single was released, Somebody to Love, written by Darby Slick, with Free Advice as the B-side. Grace not only sang but also played guitar, piano, and recorder on these tracks. In the fall of 1966, Jefferson Airplane's lead singer Signe Tolley Anderson left the band to care for her child. Bassist Jack Casady reached out to Grace and asked her to join the group. Grace accepted, explaining that she was drawn to Jefferson Airplane's more organized and professional approach. With her as the new lead singer, the band began recording new material and shifted further into psychedelic rock, moving away from their earlier folk rock roots. Their groundbreaking album, Surrealistic Pillow, featured new versions of White Rabbit and Somebody to Love. Both tracks became huge hits, reaching the top 10 on national charts. Jefferson Airplane quickly rose to become one of the most celebrated bands in the country, and Grace Slick emerged as one of the most iconic female rock vocalists of the era. In 1968, she performed the song Crown of Creation on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour while wearing blackface, and concluded the performance by raising a clenched fist in a salute associated with the Black Panther movement. In 1969, during a live appearance on The Dick Cavett Show, she stirred controversy by becoming the first person to say the M word on television during a performance of We Can Be Together. Eventually, when Jack Cassidy and Jorma Kaukonen left Jefferson Airplane to focus on their side project, Hot Tuna, Grace helped form a new band, Jefferson Starship, alongside Paul Kantner and others. Around this time, she also launched a solo career. Her first solo album was Manhole, followed by Dreams, Welcome to the Wrecking Ball, and Software. Manhole featured keyboardist and bassist Pete Sears, who officially joined Jefferson Starship in 1974. Grace and Sears co-wrote several early Jefferson Starship tracks, including Hyperdrive and Play on Love. Her second solo album, Dreams, was produced by Ron Frangipane and reflected personal themes she had explored while attending 12-step recovery meetings. The album was widely regarded as her most intimate work and earned a Grammy nomination. Grace Slick was given the nickname The Chrome Nun by fellow musician David Crosby, who also referred to Paul Kantner as Baron von Tollbooth. These colorful nicknames were later used as the title of an album they created in 1973 with bandmate David Freiberg, called Baron von Tollbooth and The Chrome Nun. Did Grace Slick manage to find the help she needed to rise above her struggles and come out stronger in the end? Stay tuned to find out. Grace Slick, A Life Beyond the Music. During the 1960s, most rock bands felt the pull of LSD. Famous names like the Rolling Stones and Miles Davis experimented with the substance, hoping it would open their minds. But it was the bands from San Francisco's Bay Area that truly led the way in psychedelic rock. Groups like the Grateful Dead, Big Brother and the Holding Company, and Jefferson Airplane helped define the genre. Jefferson Airplane's tracks like White Rabbit and Somebody to Love became major anthems of the hippie movement. The band's lifestyle matched their music, wild, fast, and full of substance and parties. But the 1960s eventually came to an end. As the decade faded, LSD gave way to cocaine, and with that shift, Jefferson Airplane evolved into Jefferson Starship. At the same time, singer Grace Slick fell deeper into addiction, especially with alcohol and substance. This struggle eventually led to her being removed from the band. When Slick finally faced the need to get clean, help came from an unexpected source, fellow musician David Crosby. Crosby had his own dark journey with substances like cocaine and heroin, but by then, he had started turning his life around. Slick had known Crosby for years. They had worked together back in 1969 during the studio sessions for Jefferson Airplane's album Volunteers. No one imagined at that time that Crosby would later be the one to help Slick find her path to recovery. In a 2019 interview with Goldmine marking the anniversary of Volunteers, Slick opened up about that chapter in her life. "It was Crosby who finally helped me get sober in the 90s, she revealed. "My daughter called him, and he came right away and got me into rehab. He showed up in the back of a limo, picked me up, and took me to Exodus, a place here, and it worked. I haven't done substance since." Around that same time, Slick stepped away from music altogether. Instead of returning to the chaos of touring and the excesses of rock life, she turned her focus to drawing and painting. Even in her sober years, Slick didn't dismiss her psychedelic past completely. She had advice for young musicians thinking about trying LSD. "When I was doing a lot of acid," she said, "set and setting were important. You don't take acid in the middle of Harlem, for instance. You take it out in the mountains or the prairie. Too many people in one place is not a good place for acid." LSD had helped inspire some of her most iconic songs. But now, at 84 years old, she admitted, "I couldn't take acid now. I'd turn on the news and probably end myself." Though said as a joke, her point was clear. Mixing substance with heavy or stressful news is never a good idea. And truthfully, the news back in the 60s wasn't exactly cheerful either. After retiring, and after surviving a house fire, a divorce, and a breakup, Slick found comfort in art. She began drawing and painting animals, simply to lift her own spirits during tough times. Before long, she was asked to write her memoir, which became Somebody to Love, a rock and roll memoir. Her agent noticed her artwork and encouraged her to include portraits of other rock legends she had known. At first, she hesitated, saying, "It was way too cute. Rock and roll draws rock and roll." But she eventually agreed after realizing she genuinely enjoyed it. Colorful portraits of Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jerry Garcia were added to the book. Her memoir also includes Alice in Wonderland-themed paintings and a number of other illustrations. Two of her portraits, of Jorma Kaukonen and Jack Casati, were even used as the cover art for the 1998 album The Best of Hot Tuna. Though Slick had loved art since childhood, she hadn't done much of it during her music career because she found it hard to split her focus. She also uses canvas, pen, ink, scratchboard, pastels, and pencils. Many of her works are mixed media. Her artistic styles range from whimsical, storybook-like Alice in Wonderland scenes to realistic portraits of rock icons, scratchboard animals, minimalist ink nudes, and a wide variety of other subjects and looks. What are your thoughts on Grace Slick's revelations? Do you believe Jim Morrison's life might have been saved if things had gone differently? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.